and then Timmeh, son of Timmeh. It always reminded me of Timmy from South Park.
Timmeh.
Hey guys, welcome back to the LNA podcast. I'm Arik.
I'm Lillian.
And today we are joined with a special guest, our first three-person episode. And with us today is Alan.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Your
Alan is,
accent's so
one of the
funny.
other admins.
No, you guys have the funny accents. Come on.
I've tried to kill off my southern accent. I don't think it shows up.
My accent
so
fits more
Alan-
in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it does.
Today we're going to talk about Tyrion VII. So before we jump into the chapter summary, we always go through and identify like who the main character is of the chapter. And for the most part, the POV character is the main. But in this one, I'm switching it up and I'm saying that Tywin Lannister is our main character. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I kind of had that as well. Tyrion obviously being the POV, but this is our introduction to Tywin. I felt that he kind of was front and center for a lot of that.
He's a big part of the chapter. For me, I was focused more on the mountain clans, but it's all together.
Okay. Yeah, my whole reasoning was Tyrion was our vessel through it, but a lot of the main points is to figure out what Tywin has been doing this whole time and what his future plans are and all that stuff. So this is one of the first times where our POV guy is not who the center of attention is. So as always, the podcast format, we're going to discuss who the main character and who the chapter focuses on. We're going to go into what actually happened in the chapter with a quick summary. We're going to move on to who had the biggest influence on the POV character and why. We jump to knowing how the future plays out. What should the characters have done differently to avoid that result? We move to how do the actions in this chapter affect the other plots? We close out now with best lines, standout appearances, and any theories that may apply. Not a whole lot of theories going on with this one. Okay, so now for the quick chapter. So as we begin, Tyrion and his host of mountain clansmen descend into the Lannister camp at the crossroads. The mountain clans are struck by the size of the lion's host, so Tyrion thinks this will make them easier to control. We meet the great Tywin Lannister and his brother Kevan Lannister. A lot of banter ensues between Tywin and Tyrion, but a couple of the key points that they touch on is Tywin went to war over Lannister pride. The Riverland forces are scattered and nearly defeated. The Arryns are not considered a threat. Lords Vance and Piper are loose, and so is Beric Dondarrion. Tywin meets the mountain clans, and he handles them well. He manipulates them for him after he learns of the Stark mobilization. A lot of this chapter was focused on conversation back and forth between Tywin and Tyrion, so these were just the quick summary points of what actually happened. Did I miss anything out, guys?
I think you got everything.
Okay. So Lillian, why don't you lead us off into who held the biggest influence over the character?
Biggest influence. So, like I said, I was looking more at the mountain clans because I feel like they had the influence. They make Tyrion take them with him to go see his father. They basically frighten everybody in the Lannister camps. Well, except for Tywin, of course, because Tywin is Tywin. And they end up demanding that Tyrion fight with them. So who else, could have an influence like that?
Okay. Alan, what do you think?
I was kind of thinking Tywin was the biggest influence, but I did also see the mountain clans as a big influence because obviously they're pulling Tyrion into this battle that's going to happen. But Tywin was the influence on them doing that. So by proxy, I think Tywin is the bigger influence because it's Tywin that convinces them to join the battle.
Yeah, I kind of have the same thing as both of you guys. I had the mountain clans and Tywin. So I said free of the mountain clans, even though he's in there with his Lannister people, and his goal is to is to win them over to his side. And then Tywin redirects Tyrion's plans to include them with the Mountain Clan. So it's almost like everyone was trying to pull Tyrion in different directions, and at the end, Tywin kind of brought it all together, his control. Anything else for influence?
No, that's all I had.
Yeah, I only had the Mountain Clans.
All right, so let's move on to alternative actions. So with this coming from Tyrion's perspective, I put none. Tyrion didn't really have a whole lot of opportunity to make any real decisions. But in regards with Tywin, I think maybe he should have worked harder with trying to figure out how to deal with Vance and Piper and Dondarrion. Vance and Piper to a lesser extent because they're just kind of loose and they meet up with Robb and they help him do some kind of stuff. But Dondarrion especially and the Band of Brother or the Brother Without Banners, they really stir up a whole lot of shit down there in the future books. So if Tywin would have snuffed them out right here in the beginning, that really could have changed a lot of how the Riverlands and all that stuff works out later on in Storm of Swords and A Feast for Crows and all that stuff. Lillian, what do you think?
I had Tywin as well, that he should have taken the phrase more seriously, knowing how things happened with Robert's Rebellion and how a lot of things were sealed with marriage pacts. I'm not sure why he thought that the phrase wouldn't be important. Obviously, Walder sits out and doesn't do anything, but still, as a commander, Tywin knows that the twins are important. So the Starks are going to have to get through there. And I just feel like he should have seen that coming, that there would have been some sort of arrangement.
I'll challenge you on that. So, because Walder's been the kind of guy that's only plays the winning hand, I can see why Tywin would think he'd be sitting this one out, especially with how bad the Riverlanders were getting their ass now. And then for the crossing, Tywin was short-sighted in thinking that Robb would not cross the Trident like that far north, taking you on down. So on that part, yeah, I guess I agree with you on that one. I almost want to say it's more of a smarter strategic move on Robb's part to take his cavalry down on that side and have to split his forces with that, because Tywin being a great strategist didn't even see that one coming. But I can almost understand why he would ignore the phrase. Alan, what do you think?
Yeah, certainly nothing on Tyrion's side of things. As you say, he didn't have many chances to sort of take many actions, and what he does do, he does fine enough. Tywin, yeah, he hugely underestimates Robb in this chapter. Robb is inexperienced, he is young, but I think Tywin underestimates the advisors that Robb has around him and the good counsel that he receives.
I definitely agree on that. And
the only other thing I wanted to mention was like how well Tyrion has kind of, well, not necessarily in this chapter, but he comes out of a trial of combat in the Vale, and he comes back with an army. I don't think he can do any better than that. He comes out with a huge plus for the Lannisters.
Yeah, he tames the mountain barbarians and adds them onto his. So yeah, I don't think anyone really expected that. Tywin should have been. I mean, I'm not ever going to say Tywin should have been more appreciative, but maybe right here he should have a little bit. Yeah. You got some cannon fodder.
I'm a little surprised that Tywin doesn't inquire as to what happened with Tyrion in the Vale.
Yeah, he just kind of
seems like, all right, you're back. Okay, then. Like, there's no, like, he doesn't want to report on it. He doesn't want to know, what Lysaren's thinking or anything that's happened to him. And that obviously extends beyond. Yeah, I was going to say, it extends beyond just not being concerned for Tyrion's well-being. It's, Tyrion will have strategic information at hand there.
Yeah, true. He doesn't even ask, like, how he got the clansmen on his side either. So, like, even with less about caring with Tyrion, he's just like, how'd you manage to bring all this shit over here, dude? Yeah, that's weird.
So moving on to how the events of this chapter affect basically everything else in the story, I had down that the events of the chapter, it leads to Tyrion leading the van in the next chapter and ultimately putting him in danger, which Tywin could give a shit about. So that just starts the whole chain of Tyrion being in battle.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna say Tywin accepting the mountain clans here extends to the harassment of Stannis and Kingswood, and it also factors into Cersei's plans, considering the ambushing the Dornish host. So Stannis, whenever he starts marching on King's Landing, Tyrion throws his mountain clans out there in the woods, and they start messing with his scouts and everything. And then I think it's in Feast, right, where whatever Dornish ambassadors are coming up there, she plans to have the mountain clans yell half man or something like that, or have a bunch of people yell half man and blame it on the mountain clans that are still down there to kind of villainize Tyrion even more.
Cersei had planned, supposedly according to Doran, that Cersei was going to have Trystane either kidnapped or killed, and whoever was doing it was supposed to shout half man.
Yeah. Tywin accepting the mountain clans into his thing here opens the gate for both of those things to happen. Alan, what do you got?
Not as much of a butterfly knock-on effect as that, but more impacting Tyrion. It really sidelines Tyrion's plans for the Vale, and harassing them or taking over the Vale with the mountain clans. That just becomes an immediate sort of side issue while they deal with Robb Stark.
Yeah, and it never comes back to haunt the Vale either.
No, they seem content, the mountain clans, just kind of going to King's Landing and then tottering off home at the end of things. They don't really seem to keep Tyrion to his word.
Yeah, I forgot what really happens to him.
I believe after the Battle of the Blackwater, they just kind of go back to the Vale.
I remember Chella tries to come back to King's Landing, and they won't let her and the Black Heirs back in. So I'm assuming that's after Blackwater. I think that's in Storm.
Lillian, what else do you got?
I have something written down, but honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. I have misdirection causes Jaime to be captured, and I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Does that make sense to either of you? Because I don't know what the hell. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
Tywin tells him to.
All right, you guys talk about it then.
Tells him to. Tywin tells Kevin, he's tell Jaime that I'm going to meet her up at the Trident. But I don't think he intends for Jaime to do anything because Jaime's still holding the siege at Riverrun. Whispering Wood is north of Riverrun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess Jaime. I forget why he's in the Whispering Wood to begin with, because there's just nothing going up that way, and they get no information that Robb is coming down on that side of the Trident. So maybe he's going to take Seaguard. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how Whispering Wood pans out, but certainly Tywin taking the bait and marching north against Robb leaves things open for Jaime to get captured. So yeah, I guess it does have a quite direct knock-on effect there.
That's what it is. Exactly what Alan just said. That's what it was.
All right, so since I just brought up Seaguard, so Tywin mentions that I think is it the Mallisters that hold Seaguard?
Yes.
He mentions them as one of the houses that hasn't given up yet, but he's just Seaguard's not that important. They can't stand alone by themselves. They'll fall sooner or later. So him not moving against Seaguard and taking that and leaving it open for the Robb's side, his part in the thing to stay open and on his side. It allows for Theon to go to Pike, which sets off that of the Ironborn and Winterfell being fallen and all that other stuff. So had Tywin taken Seaguard, maybe it's possible that Theon doesn't go to Pike right away, or at least at that point, and maybe he develops a little bit more of a Stark kinship and feels even further apart from his Greyjoy family that he doesn't actually sack Winterfell. Could be a thing.
That makes sense.
Does he plan on defecting and turning against the North before he leaves, or does that come when he meets his dad?
I think his dad shames him that much to where he's just all right, fine. I'll impress Daddy and I'll do this. But no, as he's off, I think he's still he's still dressed in the Stark way. He's got the whole Stark mindset still. He thinks he's actually going to convince the Greyjoys to side with him, and then that doesn't happen. What else you got, Alan?
Not an awful lot. Just really how, as a whole, it interconnects with the War in the Riverlands and Robb Stark, as we've sort of mentioned already. I think Tywin underestimating Robb and marching north like that really does give Robb the advantage that he needs.
I'm going to piggyback too, because you mentioned this a couple minutes ago. So I put he takes Robb lightly, and he doesn't consider Great John, the Blackfish, Roose Bolton. He doesn't consider any of them a threat. He doesn't pay him any attention. Doesn't even mention them by name at all. And him taking them lightly really affects how poorly he handles the initial assault of the North coming on down.
Yeah, I think as soon as you see that the North have mustered a sizable host at Moat Cailin, they're going to be marching south. They're not just going to, get a whole army together and then just not go.
Yeah, for sure.
So going back to, mentioning Roose and the Great John specifically, going back to Robert's rebellion. So we know Roose was with Ned because he advised Robert to slit Barristan's throat, right? So he was involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tywin, he kept his forces in reserve, right? Like they didn't join until basically the war was over. So is it possible that Tywin doesn't know anything about Roose and the Great John and oh my god, I'm totally blanking on his name, Brynden?
I would know Brynden because Brynden was also at the Ninepenny Kings.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Granted, a shit ton of people was fighting in Ninepenny King, so he could have gone under the radar. But Hoster and Tywin and Blackfish are synonymous with the Ninepenny Kings. I think you would know about him. But Roose and Greatjohn, you'd assume that he doesn't know anything about them aside from, oh yeah, Roose, he's at the Dreadfort, and Greatjohn's he's an Umber up there. But as far as capable of and who they are, I don't think Tywin would necessarily have to know.
There was the Greyjoy Rebellion as well, so I can't remember each individual how they sort of place they took in it, but I think you would definitely hear about people through the Greyjoy Rebellion, or possibly even meet some of them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about too. I remember specifically, we hear about Thoros, and I think we hear about Jaime being there. I don't remember ever hearing anything about Tywin being there. So I was just wondering if maybe he's never been.
He probably would have been dealing with his burning boats, but
oh.
in the aftermath of it, there would have been opportunities.
Oh, my bad.
I can see Tywin being fuck these people, and he wants to actually go there himself. So I can see Tywin not just being content with sitting back and being like, oh no, my boats are gone.
In general, though, I think he's intelligent and shrewd enough to know about major players and lords and stuff like that. I don't think he would be completely ignorant of who's in the North. He might not know minute details, but I think he's definitely heard of Roose Bolton and would know what kind of man he is.
I think he would play off that whole ancient line where the Boltons are the Stark's biggest rivals, because even Jaime knows that. So obviously Tywin would know that too. But the Great John, he might just know he's a big ass dude. I don't know how much more he would know about Great John Umber, considering the Umber's last Earth is so far fucking north. But Roose, yeah, because he eventually has dealings with Roose anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might lend itself to know that, or to believe that he does know more about what he lets on here.
But even then, I think the whole Northern Honor sort of thing, I think is it Rob's chapter before this one?
Yeah.
Catelyn gives him counsel, and she says that she sort of weighs up all the options, and she says that you could bend the knee, or we could return home to Winterfell. And she says to him, basically, you'll lose support of the rest of the North if you do that. I think that's something Tywin would know. I think Tywin would know that if Robb was to march down and then give up and turn back, then the rest of the North, would desert him. I say he would know that he still kind of doesn't think that Robb is going to come south, so maybe not.
Do we know why Robb, he comes down because Ned gets imprisoned, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read the last chapter. It wasn't part of our schedule.
I didn't read it either.
Isn't that what your group does?
I don't read the chapters that aren't mine.
I got one last point for this butterfly effect thing. So it goes back to what you said, Lillian, about the phrase. So I said Tywin's disregard for the phrase lends them to side with Robb. Had he dealt with them earlier, either diplomatically or militarily, that would have taken a huge chunk out of Robb's army. It would have never allowed the Whispering Wood to happen, and it would have kept them penned in at Moat Cailin, and really would have negated their southern advance. So Tywin not dealing with them leads to all that stuff happening. So he pretty much caused Whispering Wood on lack of action. I know I challenged you on that point earlier too, and here I am agreeing with you.
Whatever.
All right, so now we are going to move into best quotes from the chapter. So I'm going to lead this off at page 612, and I think it's kind of funny and ironic. It says, the lords of the Trident have been put to rout. Sir Edmure Tully was taken captive, with many of his knights and bannermen. Lord Blackwood led a few survivors back to Riverrun, where Jaime has them under siege. The rest have fled to their own strongholds. So this is kind of ironic because that would mean Edmure gets taken captive by Lannisters twice, and twice the Blackwoods are the last, or one of the last people to hold out and not immediately give in. And I thought that was kind of ironic how that happens, multiple times in the series.
I didn't even remember that Edmure got captured.
Oh yeah, I didn't either. I read that and I was just like, how the fuck does he get out of this again?
Yeah, that was my first. I was like, do they ransom him? What happens?
Like, is he being held with Jaime? I don't know. I haven't read that far ahead, but yeah, I forget how he actually gets out.
In response to that, don't they say that House Blackwood falls quite early?
Raventree falls, but Lord Blackwood, he's holding Riverrun.
Yeah,
he's the one getting the besieged.
He's with the sort of river, isn't he? From what I remember and what I've read about, is it Raventree Fall?
Yeah, Raventree Hall.
Yeah, it sounds like an absolute beast of a castle. Yeah, it switches hands so many times. I don't get why they yielded so easy.
I don't remember anything about it.
I just remember it has the dead werewood.
Yeah, it's described as having very, very thick walls, and it has like huge turrets at each corner, and then two massive ones at the gate. It's meant to be like, if you look it up, like the picture, like artist renditions of it, it just looks like an Harren Hall.
Maybe because the Blackwoods are a bunch of pansies.
Damn.
And that's why the Brackens should be the one to hold those damn hills. At least they don't go run and hide. Actually, like, give their all on the battlefield, where like they have to surrender because they don't have any more people. Meanwhile, the Blackwoods, they just kind of sit back, I guess, and they're just like, "Oh shit, this is going bad. Let's go run away now," and then we can be like the last people standing again, and seem like we're really good and shit. Yeah, no, fuck the Blackwoods.
Yeah, the castle's meant to have like a huge moat of, I think it's a dry moat, which usually have like spikes and shit like that. It just sounds like a very well defended castle, and they just kind of yielded it. And then we know later on in the series that they take it back from the Lannisters. So I mean, I don't get how this happens.
And then they surrender again.
Yeah, but through diplomacy that time.
But they didn't have to give it up. I mean, I guess they were running out of food and supplies and shit, so they kind of had to then.
The war was well and truly over at that point. It was like the last remaining castle to yield.
Wasn't Riverrun still up though? Yeah, Riverrun's still standing at this point in the series.
At that point,
I can't remember how that ends. Does Blackfish actually?
I mean, Jaime goes there, but I can't remember if it was the last place that he goes to or not.
Fuck, I can't remember how that happens in Feast.
In Feast, Jaime ends up over at Riverrun, and he convinces Edmure to surrender the castle, and Blackfish gets away.
Yeah, but it's just whether that came before or after Blackwood surrenders.
I feel like that's after, because he spends a lot of time with Blackwood arguing what land's going to be given up, in order to figure out to get them to bend the knee and to give up. And I believe he's at Riverrun when it starts snowing, and he gets that letter from Cersei. Is that? I
almost want to say Riverrun was first, and then he hits Raventree, and then he hits.
Yeah. According to the World of Ice and Fire.westeros.org page, Raventree is the last one remaining.
Okay. All right. So, what else do you guys got for quotes?
I had Tywin again, and it's back with the old underestimation thing again. When he's talking about Robb Stark, and he says, "No sword is strong until it's been tempered." The Stark boy is a child. No doubt he likes the sound of war horns well enough, and the sight of his banners fluttering in the wind. But in the end, it comes down to butcher's work. I doubt he has the stomach for it. Yeah, I thought that was quite a nice wee quote.
Yeah, it definitely shows how little he thinks of Robb Stark. Wrong he actually ends up being.
He just thinks little of everybody, which goes to
I love reading Tywin's lines because I just read it in Charles Dance's voice, and it's brilliant every time.
Oh yeah. I was doing the same thing. I was like, at the end of it, I was just, this was a really good chapter, just because I got to remember Charles Dance.
Yeah, and how everything played out on the show. He did a really good job about that. Isn't he skinning something when Tyrion comes up on him?
Yeah, he's skinning a stag.
Okay.
It's Jaime.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
it's, yeah, the
That's funny.
introduction works out a little bit different. It's Jamie that sees him first. And you're gonna hate me for saying this, but I think the show's introduction to Tywin was better.
Was it the
That
same
scene stood.
conversation?
No, the one in the show's more about them creating a dynasty that'll last 1,000 years, and Tywin expects Jamie to step down from the King's Guard and stuff like that.
Wait, so in the
Yeah,
show,
'cause you can
Jamie
just
is there?
step down.
Yeah, this is before the chapter that we're discussing.
Oh, okay, okay. And then Jamie rides
It would
off,
have
and
had
then
his
Tyrion shows up.
street fight.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was before or after Robert's dead. I would assume after, but it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire series. Of like Charles Dance's presence as Tywin is just astounding.
Yeah, no, I loved him as Tywin in the show. I didn't even mind the Harrenhal scenes with Arya just because it was Charles Dance in there. The guy who played Roose Bolton was really good too, but I like Tywin better than him.
The Tywin Arya ones were I really enjoyed them, but I kept expecting it would go back and she'd be riding around on the shoulders and stuff like that. It's like it was kind of going a bit too strong, a bit too weird.
I forget who brought this up, and I can't remember if I had an article or watched a video on it. But whether or not Robert was dead at that time of that scene, I can't remember either. But because it was Tywin like gutting and skinning a deer, a stag, which kind of like symbolizes like the fall of the Baratheons at the hands of the Lannisters, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think too much about that. So I thought that was a pretty good touch from him. I don't give the show producers too much credit ever, but I was like, yeah, I didn't catch that. That was good. But that was back when George was working on the show, so maybe I'll just credit George R. R. Martin instead of them.
It was a real deer he skinned as well.
Oh,
they
really?
had another deleted scene from like season 3 or something like that, where Tywin was talking to Pycelle.
The fishing one.
Yeah, the fishing one, and he pretty much just like calls. He's like, "Stop fucking acting like I know you're normal, dude." Like, and Pycelle like stands up straight. He stops his stammering. He's just like, "Yeah, you're right." And I was just like, "Why did they ever cut this scene?" I was like, "This is awesome." But
yeah, that was really good. I don't think they've had many deleted scenes, but the few I've seen have been pretty good.
So there's a tangent for you. Lily, what kind of quote do you got?
So what interested me was when Tyrion comes up and he realizes that his father's taken the inn at the crossroads, and he sees the innkeeper, hanging up there, and the crows have pecked out her eyes and her lips and all of that stuff. And he looks up at her and he just says, "A room, a meal, and a flagon of wine. That was all I asked." He reminded her with a sigh of reproach. It's kind of sad.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I had that down and I didn't know where I wanted to throw it in. I thought this is a reminder that Book Tyrion is very different to Show Tyrion, and Book Tyrion is a little cruel at times and heartless. I think there's some mild malice in those words that he said. It was like, she deserved this, or, oh, well, look at you now.
Yeah, because just a couple passages before it, he's talking about, the gods being just since Tywin took the inn. So he's basically saying it's karma.
Yeah, which is really harsh because she's just an innkeeper. She couldn't have stopped, his kidnapping happening. She couldn't have done anything to prevent that or helped him.
I didn't get that vibe from it at all. Actually, I kind of saw it as Tyrion feeling guilty about it. With reading Dance of Dragons most recently, like I have this darker version of Tyrion in my head, but the times like was feeling like regrettable about the stuff he does then, even though like the shit that he actually says is fucking horrible, and his mantra of just like trying to function, wanting to kill and rape Cersei and all that other stuff, he still has like these feelings of guilt towards Penny and all that stuff, but it kind of gets overshadowed with all the other bad shit that he does. And so with keeping that in mind and then reading this, how he kind of just feels like all I wanted was a room, like this shouldn't have happened to you, like this is not what I intended whenever I came to the inn. So the fact that I think he feels guilty and that kind of sets it aside from like the rest of his like the traits that are most often associated with Lannister name, it further separates him from like that mold of what the Lannisters are given, like the perception that they're held as far as this point in A Game of Thrones, because Jaime's not a good guy, Cersei's not a good guy, Tywin just hung an innkeeper, and Tyrion is the one that's going, gosh, not what I meant. Came here to to get a room and some beer, and this is not kind of how I wanted this all to plan out. So it kind of had the opposite effect on me.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I'm not sure I would agree with it, but it's quite an interesting take.
In my opinion on Tyrion, like, dropped down the drain in Dance of Dragons. I was just like, this dude is fucking horrible. But for whatever reason, I did not get that impression from that line there. I was just like, all right, I don't know. So I have another quote on 6:16. This is from Tywin. Okay, so he says, he's talking about Robb here. He says, the boy may hang back or lose his courage when he sees our numbers, Lord Tywin replied. The sooner the Starks are broken, the sooner I shall be free to deal with Stannis Baratheon. And then he tells him to signal the drummers and stuff like that. So this might bleed into like another point that we talk about. But I was wondering, like, if Robert, or if Stannis wasn't, if Robb wasn't such a pressing issue for him, and that he dealt with Stannis first, and then we can just like table this and talk about this in theories. Yeah, if he addressed Stannis in the, like, if he set him as his priority and then dealt with Robb later, like, how much farther would Robb have gotten down into the Riverlands and Westlands, and how much more chaos that would have thrown everything into. So let's table that and then talk about that when we hit theories. But I just wanted to bring that quote up now, how he sees Robb as a bigger threat than Stannis, and probably rightfully so. Robb actually has an army behind him, and Stannis is just hanging out of Dragonstone right now. But yeah, just for later. Okay, so Lillian, go ahead and lead us into standout appearances.
Okay, so for standout appearances, I'm pretty sure both of you probably have Tywin, but I have the Mountain Clans again. So specifically, Shagga, son of Dolph, is that his name? Breaking a sword, over his knee, and Timmeh basically just intimidating everybody. Everybody is scared of him. So these people, they're people. The clansmen are just very intimidating overall, and an impression on everybody.
Was that
I thought they were hilarious.
a Lannister sword that he broke?
Yes.
Maybe they won't be wanting that steel from Tyrion then, because it sounds pretty shoddy.
Sorry, just a second. I'll find it. So Shagga throws the captain of the guard across the room, and as he tumbled down into the cold ashes, his lion helm askew, Shagga snapped the man's sword in two over a knee thick as a tree trunk, threw down the pieces, and lumbered into the common room. So yes, it was a Lannister sword.
That famed Lannister steel.
But yeah, it's like, even from when we first met him up to now, they're always talking about chopping dicks off and feeding them to goats. Tyrion has a line where he's just like, I'll feed it to or something. And then Tyrion's like, what, no goats this time? That was fun. And then Timmeh, son of Timmeh. It always reminded me of Timmy from South Park.
Timmeh.
That is so going in.
Yeah, that laugh is going in too.
I know, I'm really loud and I try not to be, and it just doesn't work.
But yeah, so I didn't realize Timmy fucking Timmeh was only 18 years old either, because he walks in, he's just like talking about Tywin and Kevin. He's just like, they're both old men, and he's like, yeah, Timmeh hasn't even seen his 19th year yet. So I was just like, this is an 18-year-old kid who, like, a year ago, like, stabbed his own eye out to show how much of a badass he is. So I was just like, all right. I saw a picture you posted on the Citadel where Timmeh has like this long beard and hair, and I'm just like, that's not accurate. It's not accurate. Not canon.
I agree with you, but it was what I found, and sometimes the art doesn't always match what I want. It's hard to find good art a lot of the time, actually.
Was I'm just gonna keep going. Was Timmy in the comic that you looked up? Because I saw you posted one of those.
So when I look up the graphic novels, I'm only able to get like random pages. It doesn't always show me like in succession how things work. And so I had a couple pictures of Shagga, but I didn't see anything of Timmeh.
Oh.
Shagga,
son of Dolph. There's
Shagga,
Chella,
Ulf.
Worf, son of Moog.
Who was the other dude? Han.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few other ones as well, isn't there? There's like quite a lot of
Khan, son
mountain
of
clans.
Korat, Shaga, son of Dolph, Ulf, son of Umar, Timmeh, son of Timmeh, and Bronn.
Yeah, Braun.
I like when they all walk in there, and then Bronn walks in and he kind of just like shrugs at Tyrion, like, I don't know. And
It's funny, like talking
when-
about artwork. If you look up Chella, the artwork for Chella has her looking pretty smoking hot. Yet the book
Sorry.
describes Chella as being really ugly.
It's all artist interpretation.
Yeah, it's like he goes out of his way to say like Chella looks like a boy and she has the chest of a boy and she's really fucking ugly. And then somebody decided I'm gonna make her hot with that necklace of ears.
All right, let's look. I'm looking it up right now. Hold on. Oh, that first picture is not good, but the card game, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. Yeah, not bad at all, actually. Anyway, I thought there's another quote here. When Tywin he stands up and he asks them, he's like, well, "What brings you down from your strongholds, my lords?" And Shaka says, "Horses." It's like,
You think he
Not
meant it
literally,
literally? I didn't even catch that until right now.
that's what he. What brings you down
Did
here?
this-
Horses did.
Did Chella not say like silk?
Timmeh
Yeah,
says
it's also-
silk.
Is that the rest are
Promise of
after
silk.
like steel, swords, and armor, horses, and she's like, yeah, I just want some nice silk.
The promise of silk and steel, said Timmeh, son of Timmeh.
The standout character for me, like off the back of that Mountain Clan, bursting into the room sort of thing, was Tywin. Just especially for that bit when he just remains completely calm. He's just not, intimidated at all. He doesn't flinch. He's not bothered. Handles the situation absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, I had
Just
the
knows
same thing.
exactly how to play them and stuff. It's pretty smart from Tywin.
Yeah, I said he was undaunted by the mountain clans. He handles them easily and even like almost seamlessly like slides them into his plans by playing into their ego. Talking about how his own guys are scared to fight the mountain warriors and all that stuff. And Tyrion immediately he catches on. He's just like, ah, shit, I see what he's doing. And then Tim is just like, we're not scared. I'll go fight him. And then the other was like, anywhere that their clan goes, we've been there first. And then everybody just kind of piles on. I thought that was very well done by Tywin. I also dropped Kevin Lannister down in there. So even though Kevin doesn't do a whole lot aside from give us military reports about what's happened here, we can kind of see like how similar he is to Tywin. Less brutal, no doubt, but a lot of the things he says and like how he doesn't object to what Tywin's saying shows us like how in line and how he's like the more moderate version of Tywin, the one that's nicer, I guess, to put it in a simple way. But he's basically Tywin light.
Yeah, he is kind of like a poor man's Tywin. He's kind of described as, does he not also have like a big golden mustache and bald head or like shaven head or something?
He's got short hair and his beard is close cropped. Whatever I remember, close cropped. But
he's like fatter,
portly and balding. he's fat, or portly. But yeah,
he enjoys a few ales.
Yeah, he's a second son or a third. I forget what number he is, but yeah, he does his job fine. He's a solid number 2. He's what you want in a little brother. But yeah, like I still think he would do like everything that Tywin would have done. He just might have felt more bad about it.
What, like in general, like the way Tywin...
Maybe not the more extreme things. Like he probably wouldn't have drowned the Reins in their own home, but for a lot of the military actions and stuff like that, and as far as strategic planning, I can see Kevin acting a lot in the same line. Maybe not, red wedding shit, but
yeah,
all the super heinous shit that Tywin does, I don't think Kevin would do, but he'd be like, yeah, I get it. I'm not going to give the order though, Tywin, you do that. But everything else, I can see Kevin almost doing the exact same thing.
Interesting though, in this chapter, if Tywin had followed Kevin's instructions or his suggestions, then he wouldn't have lost Jaime.
Oh yeah, holding back.
Kevin's saying, yeah, hold back, don't ride north.
Yeah. They're already entrenched in there, so.
I think Tywin's reasoning is that he wants it over quicker to deal with Stannis. Is that right?
Well, Rob's army is mobilizing, so yeah, he was just like, let's go ahead and snuff this shit out. Because like we've talked about it, he underestimates Rob at every turn. So at this point, he just likes hearing war horns and shit. So he thinks he's just gonna put him down real quickly and then head down to deal with Stannis.
I didn't remember Kevin being described as portly because I just picture the actor from the show, so that was a little surprising.
The actor's a little portly.
Kevin? No, he's not.
Yeah, he's not skinny.
He's a little man, is what I remember.
Peter is a little man.
Yeah, it says when Tyrion enters the common room, his uncle is portly and balding, with a close-cropped yellow beard that followed the line of his massive jaw.
All right, so you guys want to move on to theories or extra shit that we didn't have space to put in for the other categories section. I don't know if there's a whole lot of theories here.
I didn't at first, and then I kind of revisited it, and I realized I had a pretty strong one. And that's that Tywin was already planning this war. It wasn't entirely reactionary to Tyrion's capture. The reason for this being is that he's incredibly well organized, even for someone of his intelligence, and the logistics and time required of assembling an army of 40,000. I think he manages to split his army into two. Just the logistics and the time it takes to muster forces, call in your bannermen, get supplies, get an army on the move. It's not something that you can do that quick. I think he had planned this. I think Tyrion's capture threw it into motion. It maybe accelerated a little, but yeah, I think Tywin was planning this invasion.
Oh, interesting.
I think the general idea was that he would capture Ned when Ned rides out to meet the mountain.
Okay, so the mountain was like bait, more or less?
Yeah. And Ned thinks on this himself. He says that, in the north, he who gives a sentence must swing the sword, but he can't do it because of his leg.
Right,
so Ned, actually, he wants to ride out and deal the justice to Gregor, but he can't. And I think Tywin was probably looking to take advantage of that. But then Jaime, not knowing Tywin's plan, threw a complete spanner in the works, which is quite ironic given how much he, lauds praise on Jaime and criticizes Tyrion. It was actually Jaime that threw his plan into disarray. Tyrion that saved it. It's Tyrion obviously getting captured gave him the excuse to do what he did.
But wasn't Gregor in the Riverlands in response to Catelyn taking Tyrion?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not
Doesn't
following.
Doesn't Tywin say like, oh, I couldn't control Gregor. He does what he does. Wasn't that his official excuse? But we all know Tywin set him loose. But
yeah,
isn't that what he publicly said? Like, oh, you can't control your dogs.
I can't remember if he ever had to make an excuse for it. I think it's just the war is too far gone to have to care about that.
So was Tywin counting on Robert still being alive when he launched this war, or was he planning to kill Robert anyway?
I don't know. It's not like a fully fledged theory. It's just a wee thought that I had that I can't see Tywin being able to quickly muster two armies, mobilize them, and have the supplies for them without prior preparation. It might well be that he had contingency plans, for this sort of thing, but I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, I'm down with it. I'm ready to roll with it. But what would be the instigating factor then? Because if he sets Gregor loose to lure Ned out, and then he captures Ned while Robert is still firmly seated on the throne, how does he maneuver around that? What would be the best possible scenario there? Unless he's been planning to kill Robert either via Cersei or Pycelle or whoever.
I don't know how he would have got around it, but the intent would obviously be to remove Ned's influence on Robert, which he must have seen as a threat.
Unless he planned to blame it on Ned, Ned was the one that was doing all this shit, but then he'd have to rely on Robert trusting Tywin over Ned, and Robert wouldn't do that. He already talked down a war between Starks and Lannisters earlier, so he wouldn't consent to this, even with Tywin talking at him. I don't know.
I think with the whole Joffrey Direwolf situation. I think Rob showed, if anything, that he wouldn't take sides, and that he is kind of I don't know what the word, but you kind of give in to Cersei, not completely.
Well,
you know,
it was I think it was the Fever Dream episode that we recorded about a month or so ago, but he like Ned's already got it like his fucked up leg, and he tells him, he's like, I'm gonna bring Jaime back to King's Landing, you guys are gonna shake hands, and then we're gonna put all this mess behind us, and that's even with Cersei barking at him, telling him that, you know, this guy, his wife takes your brother-in-law, and then he starts a fight with your other brother-in-law in the streets and all this shit, and Robert is just like, shut up, woman, not having it, slaps her. He's like, everybody's just gonna hug it out and everything's gonna be okay. So like even like right then, like Robert has the chance to pick a side and shoot, and like being this quote warrior king that he's so famous for, he chooses to not go to war for one side or the other. So if that was Tywin's plan to like flip Ned on him, like Robert wasn't going to have it either way. That would have been like a 3-way go, but he probably would have flipped that against Tywin just because he wouldn't believe that Ned would have done that. So Tywin would have had to taken out Robert for this whole thing to go into plan. But again, he has like so many people in King's Landing to do that for him.
Yeah, he might well have been involved. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much on that, but kind of the way I was looking at it was kind of tying into the Preston Jacobs theory of the Riverlands sort of conspiracy.
Oh yeah, where they're all lying about where Gregor was.
Yeah, but I think this chapter kind of shows that Tywin admits it. He admits doing raids, and that Gregor's out doing raids. And the way I kind of read it is that that's not raids since the war started. It's from before.
It's been going on for a while.
And he also says to Tyrion, you know, Lannister pride was at stake. I had to start a war.
Yeah, and those peasants could be wrong too. Like it might as well have been like Lannister men like out there doing all that shit. It just wasn't Gregor at every single spot.
Yeah, I'm jumping ahead, but the next Tyrion chapter, Tyrion does remark that Gregor is clad in really plain plate mail that doesn't bear any insignia or markings of any sort, and that's how Gregor's described by the peasants, which I think is quite interesting. I think it's quite purposely put there.
Lillian, what do you think?
I'm having a hard time believing that Tywin was planning this beforehand. Like it doesn't make sense to me, because the amount of time between when Tyrion is taken and then however long it takes to get through the mountains to the Eyrie, his trial, and then get back down the mountains to the crossroads, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe? A good probably 4 to 5 days at least that they're going through before they get to the Bloody Gate, right? Because they get attacked by the mountain clans. And then it takes a day for Tyrion to get from the Bloody Gate up to the Eyrie, and then he's in the Sky Cells. So I feel like in that amount of time, it would be reasonable for Tywin to call his banners. But I don't know anything about warfare.
I mean, there's the amount of time it takes to muster a force, but then also get the supplies for that, which is, like, you think about 40,000 men. Think about what they're having for breakfast, what they're having for, you know, their next meal. You know, for everyone else that like follows the army, like their squires and, you know, all sorts, tents, provisions. It's a hell of a lot.
Yeah, because the timelines, like we can go off of the King's Landing plots as far as timelines go, and from when Ned hears about Tyrion's capture until now, like because he's been thrown in the Black Cells. We don't know how long he's been in the Black Cells. I think, what about like 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And that does kind of put pressure on getting all that supplies up and ready in just that amount of time. Because these men are all fully armored and, like Alan said, provisioned. They're well entrenched in the Riverlands already.
Yeah, they've had quite a few battles, but also the speed and effectiveness at which they managed to do it. I mean, it might not be a case that Tywin's actually planned this, but I think he's being the man that he is. He's definitely looked at how he would invade the Riverlands.
Oh, definitely. Like, I definitely believe that he was already planning how he would invade anywhere.
Sounding. Yeah.
Yeah, so when Tyrion comes down, he sees there's towers of unmoored stone, granted unmoored, but he calls them towers. So they had time to build, rock towers and shit. There's a low earthen wall, 4 feet high. Again, that can be done in a day. But so you have unmoored stone towers, and then you have 3 lines of like stakes of the camp is already like well entrenched and it's huge. There's banners everywhere. Yeah, because when he rides through, it says they lifted 3 rows of stakes were pulled from the ground to make a hole in the line. So this is at least a 3-line deep wall of stakes that's blocking off the road, and then you can just see how deteriorated the innkeeper is to kind of give an indicator of how long they've been there, and probably definitely not enough time for them just to react and equip themselves and then mobilize within the 3 week span, unless they were just moving like really quickly.
Yeah.
Which could be a thing. They could have just been moving really fast the entire time. Who knows?
Well, that's something I've always wondered about because, they always make it seem like they get somewhere and then all of a sudden, whoever the commander is, they have like this lavish tent set up where apparently there's enough room for a common room and all this other stuff. Then the soldiers have their tents, and it's like, how quickly are you doing all of this? To me, that sounds like it would take a couple days, but I don't know.
Yeah,
In the
there's
army, we
some.
can set up an AO in
I think it was in
2
Sons of
hours.
Dragon I was reading that Maegor, or it might have been someone else. I can't really remember. Yeah, they had all this shit lined up in their tent, like all the skulls of the enemies, and like, yeah, it's stuff that just seemed like it would take a while to set up. It's like they're just there for a day. But
How many of the Riverland castles have fallen at this point? All of them but Riverrun and
um,
Seaguard, right?
Yeah, I think they were the last 2 holdouts.
Not just the houses, like the literal house itself.
Yeah, I thought that's the way that
So-
Tywin had described it.
So yeah, so 3 weeks to mobilize an army, to equip an army, to call an army, and then mobilize, and then to bring down all but 2 castles. A lot to do in 3 weeks. So yeah,
Well,
that definitely lends its weight behind this being ready beforehand.
You also have to take into account, though, too, like if you were one of these castles, obviously everybody knows Tywin's reputation. Are you really going to put up a fight, or are you just going to surrender as soon as you see his banners?
well, Harrenhal was yielded.
Yeah,
The lady went, so that was given up pretty quick. Raventree, they just say Raventree fell. I don't
That
know if
makes it
that
sound
was
like it was
a
under
fight or not.
siege.
But then they say
Like-
that Gregor burnt out the Pipers and the Brackens. There's action going on there. Don't really know.
Let's see. So he fought battle at the Golden Tooth, and then he met them again under Riverrun. Blackwood led the few survivors back to Riverrun. The rest fled to their strongholds, and then Raventree fell at once. Harrenhal was yielded. Gregor burnt out. Pipers and Brackens.
They're quite deep into Riverland territory.
Yeah.
Like in this very short space of time, Tywin's managed to pretty much conquer the entire Riverlands. Which, if anything else, is just I was really surprised that the Riverlands were that bad.
I guess they were just entirely unprepared. I mean, because it's more of a straight shot from Casterly Rock to Riverrun, so there wouldn't have been like that. Kind of expedites, the movement of it all. And then Seaguard being way the fuck up there makes sense that it's still holding out.
Yeah.
Then Harrenhal is more or less right on the King's Road, so that makes sense.
do you think the fact that they have a weak
I don't know.
lord has anything to do with it? Hoster is basically dying.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, because Edmure
But
is
then, like Rob
inexperienced.
having good counsel with him, there's the Blackwoods and the Brackens. There's other strong houses in the Riverlands. You'd think they'd be able to, I don't know, put up a bit more of a fight.
I mean, we know how strong Lannister swords are. Just shows you how bad the Riverlands are.
Yeah, per show.
Let's jump to this that other quote that I had where Tywin says like he's gonna deal with Robb first and then move on to Stannis. So how do you guys think it would have gone down if he uprooted Stannis out of Dragonstone first and then moved on to Robb? Robb would have secured Riverrun first and then like bolstered like the central strength of the Riverlands.
I think given Rob's victories that he does have against the Lannisters later in the war, I think he might well have taken Casterly Rock, or at least Lannisport, because he comes very close to it, and he forces Tywin back, doesn't he? Because of how far he's invading into the Westerlands.
Yeah, he forces Tywin to react to his own movements rather than Tywin acting with his own agency.
Yeah.
So that's definitely true. I don't know how well Rob would do in a siege, though. He seems to be better equipped for ambushes and quick skirmishes.
Yeah,
and
guerrilla
stuff like
warfare.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he would have taken and held Lannisport or Castle Rock. I think they more likely would have put it to the torch.
You think Rob would
What
have
do you
put it
think,
to the
Lauren?
torch?
Yeah, quite possibly.
I don't see him as being that type of
Not Castle
person.
Rock.
He would get to Lannisport, though. I think that would have expedited Ned's execution. And I think being like an emotional kid out on his own, and then also having Great John and Roose like talking in his ear, I definitely
Oh,
think burn the shit out of Lannisport.
yeah, they might encourage him to do that type of thing. Okay.
I mean,
Rob was
they do
never.
take a few castles, though, don't they? Obviously,
I don't know.
there's the I forget the name of it, but the one that
The
Jaime
Westerlings.
Westerling's from.
Yeah.
The Crag, is it?
Yes.
And they take at least one other castle, I think.
I can't remember which
I'm just
one.
trying to remember what they actually did with it.
I was just kind of confused because I don't remember hearing anything about Stannis mobilizing prior to this. Like, obviously, yes, he is a threat that Tywin should be worried about. He's the rightful heir. Does Tywin know about the kids at this point?
If he does, he's in denial.
I
He's not going to have
yeah,
anybody say shit about it.
I always find it very hard to believe that he wouldn't be smart enough to know.
Yeah.
But maybe he's just that much in denial about it that he's become blind to it, that he stubbornly refuses to believe it so much that he's just pretending it's not there right in front of him.
Okay, so even with that, however Tywin is taking it, did I miss something? Like, are we told that Stannis is mobilizing?
No, not as far as I know. He just says the sooner I can deal with him, the sooner I can deal with Stannis. So, and that almost makes it seem like an easier option. Like Stannis doesn't have an army yet; he has whatever garrison he has at Dragonstone, and then Dragonstone being so far separated from the Stormlands, it would almost seem like a more efficient use to get rid of the quote other like heir to Robert. He'd have to worry about Renly then.
Yeah.
It's weird that he doesn't mention Renly at all, but it almost would seem easier to deal with one guy and then his little brother before moving on to take on an entire northern army. You know.
Well, Renly hasn't officially made his claim yet, has he? Like, even if he had, how would Tywin know?
Well, he fled the city, so
Yeah.
he's refused to acknowledge Joffrey.
Yeah, but by doing that, though, how does anybody know that he didn't do it to support Stannis?
Well, I mean, like, because if Tywin takes out Stannis, then the claim goes to Renly anyway, as Robert's heir. So he would need to take care of Stannis and then take care of Renly as well. So maybe that's why he delayed it, because he has to have known
common
that
knowledge
Renly is gone.
Renly really doesn't like or support Stannis, so might be plain to see for anyone in King's Landing.
Okay.
Might be able to see which way that wind would blow.
If he doesn't take Robb seriously, then there's no way he takes Renly seriously either.
I wouldn't take Renly seriously.
I mean, Renly has the charisma and popularity to gather people to his side, but like as far as his military prowess and all that stuff, like Tywin probably puts him on the same level, if not maybe slightly higher than Robb, just because he's older and he's a Baratheon.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of is growing up with Robert. Actually, Robert was in the Vale, but you know what I mean. You would think that he would be a tougher person.
That'd be interesting to see how that actually played out. I mean, it works better for me and you, Lillian, being Stannis fans, that he chose to ignore Stannis in the beginning. But
wait, Alan, who do you support? I don't know if I've ever seen you say anything before.
In regards to
who do you feel
houses.
is okay? Fine, whatever.
Oh, what were you going for? Who's
the king? Who's the king? Yeah.
Oh, it's Stannis.
But you're not a fan.
I'm a big Stannis fan.
Oh, okay.
I'm a big Stannis fan. I just don't really take sides that much.
You're more
neutral. Just did, and now it's on record.
Damn.
We outed you.
Okay, do you guys have anything else for Stannis? Because I have.
For Stannis?
Oh, well, yeah, that's what we're talking about is for Stannis and Tywin. I have a theory if you guys don't have anything else.
No, go ahead.
So for really, really out there theories, There is a theory on Reddit, and there's also a corresponding YouTube video. I posted the link in the Citadel group if anybody wants to watch it. It's about Timmeh being the heir to the Vale, that he is the rightful heir. So basically, how it goes is when Littlefinger is, breaking down the entire Vale succession, and it's super confusing, at least for me. I've had to listen, because I don't read the books, listen to it like 5 times in a row, and I still don't understand how Harry is the heir. But when he's giving that explanation, he mentions how Jon Arryn's niece, who was a Waynwood, was carried off by one of the burned men. And so, going with that, if a legitimate child was born to that Waynwood and the burned man, that child would come before Harry the heir. And so, the theory goes that since Timmeh is the only named burned man, he would be that child. What do you guys think about that?
It's interesting. It's not one I was aware of before. I did watch the video earlier. I think I can't see Timmeh being supported by the Vale. I think they would just ignore his claim and support Harry.
Definitely. It's completely out there.
This relies on Timmeh being like a firstborn son of like all the chieftains in a row, which is a large assumption in and of itself. Was this Waynwood chick that was dragged off by the burned men like the only daughter or something?
No, she is the elder daughter, she's the eldest daughter of Jon's brother. So she would come in line before Anya Waynwood, if that makes any sense.
Okay, because there's no male heirs, so...
Yeah, and that's why it goes through all of that, gymnastics to ultimately end up with Harry as the heir.
I think if it was to be true, I think George would have spent a bit more time on Timmeh as a character.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't believe it. I just think it's funny.
Because Timmeh,
it's definitely interesting.
Timmett's 19. Harry's around the same-ish age by the time Dance with Dragons rolls around. The ages line that Timmeh is about on that same exact line of Waynwoods,
Yeah.
And there's nothing to prove that.
Oh, so that's another part of it is if it were, to become an actual claim, they're theorizing that possibly Timmett's mother is still alive. The Waynwood is still alive, so she would be the one to be able to, I guess, prove it to the rest of the Vale Lords that Timmeh is the rightful heir. But that's assuming like a noble lady has survived all of these years in the mountains.
When was she taken?
I don't think we're ever given a time, or if we are, I'm not sure when it is.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot behind it.
Yeah, no, just...
It'd be funny.
It's quite funny imagining like the mountain clans in charge, because they're kind of like wildlings, aren't they? They're not really like the northern mountain clans, the hill tribes or whatever they call them.
No, they're definitely wildlings.
They
call themselves free men and everything.
They would have no concept of how, Westeros society and, how shit's run, how castles are run, and just the idea.
He can stake his claim and he'll die. That'll be funny.
I think the theory assumes that Tyrion has conquered the Vale.
Yes, that Tyrion's going to come back and, come back with Dany eventually from Meereen, and they're going to basically conquer the Vale and give it to Timmeh. Because he promises, at one point Tyrion promises, the clansmen that they will have the Vale. And it goes back to the Lannister always pays their debts.
Thinking about that.
Well, of course not.
He doesn't give a shit about the Vale or the mountain clans. He never did. All his promises to the mountain clans was just to keep him alive for like another day. And then once he got to King's Landing, he was like, these are my pawns now, and I can just do whatever I want with them. He never thinks about the mountain clans.
Yeah, and they seem content with just like, it's cool, we fought in a few battles, we went to King's Landing, we've had a fun trip, we're going to go home. They're never like, yeah, we still want that shit you promised us.
Well, they got some souvenirs. Didn't they get some axes at some point?
I'm sure they looted the Trident after the battle.
Oh, yeah. So they got
something. I did find it funny that when Tyrion brings it up with Tywin, he's like really blasé and nonchalant about it. He's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to need about 3,000 helms, hauberks, sword spikes.
And a wagon.
That's a lot. 3,000. Like, that's a small army.
And they just have an extra.
It's a sizable army, really.
Brought an extra 3,000 helms with us, just in case.
Yeah, I don't know what he was expecting. Like, I doubt they take 3,000 spare of everything.
Yeah, no.
Well, my favorite part from that too is, he's having that conversation, and that's when Shagga throws the guy into the tent, and Tywin asks, basically, who the hell are these people? And Tyrion just makes the comment, "Oh, they followed me home. Can I keep them? They don't eat much."
Fuck. Yeah, there's a lot of good one-liners that we just didn't touch on in the quotes, but really, like, we'd be giving out lines from the whole chapter.
We
if we were
basically
touching
read
on
the
every
entire
smartest
chapter.
thing Tyrion said. I mean, Alan has the voice for it. He can read it if he wants.
I think any chapter with Tyrion's going to have a lot of good lines.
Definitely does. He drinks and he knows things.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he
Kill
does.
you.
I have that hoodie. My dad got me that hoodie for Christmas.
You just outed yourself.
It's soft because I never wear it. So
That's a lie. He wears it all the time.
anyway, you guys got anything else from the chapter? Any random notes?
Just one minor thing. It's not really much to touch on. Just the fact that the inn at the crossroads, damn, that place sees a lot of action.
Yeah, it does.
Is
Isn't
it
that
still
where
standing?
Sandor comes back again?
The whole Micah Joffrey shit happens.
Oh yeah, that too.
So it starts with
It's-
that, and then that's where Brienne runs into Gendry and Willow, right? And she thinks Willow
Yeah.
is Arya. And then they got hit too by Rourke and Biter and all of them.
Willow was Masha's niece, was it? Or daughter or something? The
Something
woman that
like
was
that.
like hung.
Yeah. Young cute. Those poor people.
Bad place to have a hotel.
I mean,
Or a
it's
good
right
place. I mean-
slap bang in the
They do have a lot of traffic.
the busiest kind of crossroads.
Yeah,
It's-
it's good
yeah.
and off
They should have.
during off-war times. It's probably great business.
Tywin definitely looted the shit out of that place though, because they had to have a lot of bank in there, especially if Robert's caravan like passed through.
Oh yeah,
That sucks for them. But oh well.
there was an interesting Blackfire kind of thing at the end.
Oh yeah, I remember
yeah.
that iron something or whatever.
It used to be.
But it's not Crossroads though. I thought it was
called, like
the
the Dragon's Inn or something like that.
it's the kneeling in, isn't it?
The inn of the kneeling man.
Yeah, isn't that the one that had the dragon?
Oh no,
Is
this
that
is
the same
just
spot as-
the sign for the inn used
Yeah.
to be a black dragon,
And then it rusted and it became a red dragon.
and then Daemon obviously, took the black dragon as his emblem, and then one of the lords of the Riverlands kind of like seen it and was a Targaryen supporter and was like, "Fuck that." But it was just coincidence that it was a black dragon and not a red one.
Is this place also Lord Harroway's town, or is it just like right down the road? And they're two,
It's close.
but not the same.
No, Hathaway's Town's the place that has the ferry.
That's right. That's where
I think
Sandor.
they cross.
does-
I think they're like on either side of the river.
That makes sense. All right, guys. Well, that about wraps up the podcast. A real short one for you here today. Lillian, what are we doing next?
After this chapter, I believe, is Barry's dismissal.
But yeah, so we'll have more guests on in the future. Alan, thanks for taking the time out and hanging out with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
We'll have a couple more of the other admins on, and then a couple of regular posters and whatnot. So we'll open up to anybody who wants to come on, and we're working through organizing some Clash chapters right now. So anyone else that we add on is going to be in through Clash. As always, thanks again for listening. Let us know what you liked, what you hated, what we can change. Still haven't said it on a fucking podcast name yet. But yeah, so that's it for me, guys. See you guys later.
Thanks.